I'm going to unbox the Panasonic FZ2500. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 6 things I really love about this camera as far as the video features go, and then 4 things I don't like about this camera. At the end of the video, I'll show some test footage that I shot in Europe. If you don't want to watch the reasons why I like and don't like this camera and just want to see test footage, video footage, I made a video right here that you can click on and just watch the test footage. I'll also have another video of test footage coming out a little later, so subscribe to the channel and you can see that when I finish editing that together. The number one thing I like about the Panasonic FZ2500 is a major topic with a bunch of subtopics, and that is the codec and video frame rates that this camera shoots to. This camera can basically record to all of the same formats as the GH4 with most of the frame rates except for the super slow motion frame rate, but you get Cinema 4K, you get NTSC, all flavors of NTSC, and you also get PAL, so it's a world camera. You can swap between regions. This camera also has all of the same photo styles as the GH4, even the V-Log-L, which unfortunately you have to purchase separately, but you can load the V-Log-L into this camera and have Vlog. There's a 422 10-bit HD feed coming out of this camera with a micro HDMI, although once you record with an external recorder at 422 10-bit, it disables the recording of the SD card. And finally, there's an unlimited record time in 4K, 1080, and all the codecs, unlimited record time. The number 2 reason why I like this camera are the headphone and mic jacks that this camera finally has, and you have some audio controls pretty much the same as the GH4. The third thing I like are the built-in ND filters that are right on the lens itself that you can just switch on with physical buttons, or leave it on auto completely, but it's right here on the lens, easy access, very clear, just like a proper camcorder. The image stabilization. The image stabilization is similar to Panasonic's video cameras, which have the 5-axis hybrid optical image stabilization. You can go handheld, and if you're steady enough, your footage can resemble what a gimbal looks like. Just like a proper camcorder, you have all of those controls at your fingertips. Here I just enabled the focus peaking, and you have the focus magnification. So all of the features that you would find in a camcorder are here for camera aids. The 6th and final thing I like about this camera is the battery life. The FZ2500 uses the same battery as the FZ1000 and also the same batteries that you found in the GH2, which it seems small compared to other camera manufacturers, but it lasts for a good 2 hours in video mode, and if you turn the camera on and off within those 2 hours, you can stretch that to half a day. So I was shooting video for about half a day with just one battery, and then I swapped to a second battery. And if you want to shoot continuously, since the camera can record continuous video, you can buy one of these DC couplers. So this one I just got really cheap off Amazon, and you just plug this into a wall here, and this is a dummy battery that you pop in here, and you can have an unlimited battery life with this adapter like this. Now I'm going to talk about 4 things I don't like about this camera. The first one has some subcategories, but it all has to do with the lens. This is a monster of a lens on a camera like this. It's bigger than the FZ1000, and I think it's bigger than, pretty sure it's bigger than the Sony RX series, RX10. And then when you turn it on, it goes out, and it stays out in this length. The zoom is within this barrel. So that is kind of a good thing, because I suppose if you mount this on a gimbal, you won't have a huge weight shift when you're zooming in and out, but I don't know why anyone would want to put this on a gimbal. And once it's extended, you have to keep it out like this for every shooting. All your shooting, this is how long the barrel is going to be, which I think is massive if you're trying to shoot under the radar. The other things I don't like about the lens, besides it being too large, is it's a 24 to 480 zoom, a 20 times optical zoom in the lens. But then once you start zooming in, which you can't really tell that I am zooming in because it's all internal in the lens barrel, is that it stops down when you zoom all the way into 480 to an f4.5. Combined with a 1-inch sensor, that is not a lot of light, so this lens is not good in low light shooting. And when you're also in low light, the autofocus hunts a lot. The second thing I don't really like about this camera, which is some subcategories, are the body of the camera. I think this body is really huge. Let me take off this lens cap, which is already pretty big. But in comparison to a GH4, here's a GH4 with a 14-140 all-purpose zoom lens on there. And the bodies are a little bigger for the Panasonic FZ2500. The hand grip on the GH4 I really like, but the FZ2500, the grip I think is a bit thin. It's thin on this part right here, whereas the GH4 is a little thicker, so it allows me to properly grip it and hold on to it and feel secure, whereas this one is quite thin. Although it looks large, it ends up making you hold the camera where it's gonna naturally want to fall out like this. Also, when I'm holding it with one hand, my palm presses some of these buttons. I don't know if there's a feature inside the menu that can disable them, but when I'm shooting, I would hit this button when I'm squeezing the camera, holding onto it, and accidentally hit some of these buttons and change the settings while recording. The third thing I don't like about this camera is that in the video mode, there are a few cropping that's happening. The major crop is when you go into 4K from 1080. Regular 1080, you already, even though it says 24 millimeters, once you go into video mode, your zoom starts at 25 millimeters. So you lose a millimeter by just doing HD video. But I'm in 4K right now, and this zoom is now a 36 millimeter. 36 is 720. So if you like wide angle shots and you're shooting 4K, which is the best codec that this camera offers, it crops into the sensor. So you're shooting at a 36 instead of a 25 millimeter. That's a big bummer to me. I like to shoot wide angle, and now I can't get that with this camera. The last thing I don't like was a feature that I read about, but I don't really see a way to control it, is that when you're in these other modes, you can change your settings, and when you swap mode, go back to video, you are stuck with whatever settings you just changed in these other modes. But what's supposed to happen, what I read is supposed to happen, is that when you switch into other modes, you can change the picture profile and I think some of the the ISO, f-stop, and shutter speed. And then when you go back to video mode, all of the settings that you originally had for video mode stay the same and doesn't get changed by the changes you made in the other modes. That doesn't really work. At first it was happening with just the picture profile, but then when I would go to manual, change the picture profile, and then go back to video, it saved the change. It didn't go back to the original picture profile I was using. So that's a small thing, but when I shoot, I like to swap between video and stills, and it would have been nice to keep all my video settings the same after I switched to another still setting. My final conclusions about this camera will just talk about who I think this camera is meant for. It's a good travel camera if you want to shoot more video than stills. If you do things like, if you're a filmmaker, a work production, and you do location scouts, this is a great camera to have for location scouts. If you are a run and gun documentarian, and you want a primary camera or a good B camera to complement a GH4 or another Micro Four Thirds camera, this is really good for documentaries. Behind the scenes videos, event videos that are in daylight, this is pretty good. It's a good B cam for weddings if there's a lot of light. Receptions in dark, dim light, this is not good, but if it's bright outside or if it's bright indoors, this is pretty good for B-roll for a wedding. If you have a family and your kids play sports outdoors, this is a pretty good camera to bring because of the zoom range and the quality of footage. If you want to capture your children's sporting events, this is pretty good. And then also if you do outdoor nature photography or video, like filming birds or you know, going on safari, this is a decent camera to take outdoors and capturing that. What it's really not good for is for if you're a vlogger, if you do a lot of your own selfie videos, this is not a good camera. Even though the LCD articulates to face you, I would not recommend this camera at all for vloggers. For narrative filmmaking, this is probably not a good choice. If you film concerts indoors, it's not very good. Outdoor concerts maybe, but indoor concerts where the light shifts, you have a zoom and a focus, but you don't have a ring for your aperture while you're filming like you do on the RX10 series. So if you're in shifting lighting conditions during a concert, it's not easy to operate. And then it's not good for street photography. If you're a street photographer, once you turn on this camera, the lens stays at that length, so it's not a hidden ninja camera that you can just pull out and do some street photography with. You also, not really good for portraits. If you do portraiture, if you do landscapes, just wide vistas, this is not very good. And there's a time-lapse feature built into the camera, but I would not use this for time-lapse. So those are my thoughts about the camera. Now I'll show some test footage I shot in Europe.